see that the government is taking this step to ensure that the healthcare professionals in this province are protected when they do their job every day, Mr. Speaker. I've said it before that I was fortunate as a paramedic that the paramedics in this province have been using these safety engineered needles for many years now, and I'm just wondering why it has taken so long for government to move on providing these safety devices to other healthcare providers, Mr. Speaker. But I do caution and wonder why in the bill it allows for the government to exempt a workplace or class a workplace from being a healthcare workplace when the bill is there to provide these healthcare providers with these pieces of devices that hopefully will protect them, Mr. Speaker, but it gives the Governor and Council the ability to exempt a healthcare workplace from having to provide safety engineered needles, Mr. Speaker. So I wonder why the purpose of this bill is actually is defeated when you have that clause in there. And I guess what we'll do is maybe look at this when it passes through to law amendments and see if we can maybe make changes, because realistically that's going against what the purpose of the bill is, Mr. Speaker. So we do support this going on to law amendments, and I know we'll have some discussion then to see if we can make sure that this piece of legislation passes and really gives the protection to the healthcare providers that they need, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise and speak just for a couple of minutes on Bill number 13. I'd like from the outset to extend my appreciation to the government for recognizing that this is a very important issue to begin with, and I'm proud of the role that our Liberal caucus has played in bringing this issue to the floor, first of all, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, each and every day there are thousands of workers who are exposed to an unthinkable risk in the workplace because the risk they could suffer a needle stick injury, and it could happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. It does happen, Mr. Speaker, to nurses, to LPNs, to doctors and maintenance staff and many others. A worker, Mr. Speaker, who suffers a needle stick injury is potentially exposed to more than 33 blood-borne diseases, including HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C. And while conventional needles save a few cents in the short term, Mr. Speaker, the hidden costs far outweigh this immediate benefit. Mr. Speaker, disease testing, drug treatments, overtime costs, and the stress that a needle stick injury places on the worker and his or her family needs to play a more prominent role when healthcare supply purchases are made. While an initial investment, Mr. Speaker, is required to support this bill, it will save the healthcare system in the long run. Mr. Speaker, this piece of legislation affords protection to workers while saving money in healthcare. It is a win-win situation. But Mr. Speaker, I do need to state for the record, we do have a few concerns that Bill number 13 does not go far enough to protect as many workers as it should. This is not the Liberal bill, Mr. Speaker, that was introduced at first. This is a government bill, and those concerns are about this government bill. This is not the piece of legislation that we first proposed. So I will say, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister and to the government, we have those concerns, and we will continue to debate this and address those concerns through the law amendments process. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
If I recognize the Honourable Minister of Health, it will be to close debate. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And just quickly, the honourable member from the NDP did mention the exemption, and the exemption really is in place for in case there are healthcare workplaces or in specific cases where a safety engineered needle cannot be used. And we just want to make sure that we're not impeding the use or the administration of health services by having this act in place. Also, I would want to extend my sincere thank you to the member from Glace Bay for his advocacy on this issue and for his work and the work of the Liberal Party on pushing this issue forward. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I would like to move second reading on Bill number 13.
The motion is for second reading of Bill number 13. Would all those in favour of the motion please say aye. Aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 13, an act respecting safer needles in healthcare workplaces.
Ordered that this bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to call Bill 24, Agricultural and Marketing Act, for second reading.
Public bills for second reading. Bill number 24. No. Order. Point of. Honourable Member for Cold Harbour Eastern Passage and a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm wondering if we can have this one put down, because I know I was discussing it with the Minister of Agriculture, but my understanding was no one has told me that this was actually coming forward today. So I know we talked about it, but it was never at that stage. But maybe we can call Bill 30 and then come back to this one, if that's possible.
The Honourable Minister, no, hang on, just order. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, we'd like to go now to private members' public bills. Number 30, Members and Public Employees Disclosure Act.
Private member public bills, number 30. Oh, sorry. The Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party.
As you can tell, Mr. Speaker, since the election, there's things are done a little differently here in this House. So it's interesting and to see the government House Leader introducing legislation, such early stage calling legislation that's being introduced by the opposition. Mr. Speaker, Bill number 30 is the Members and Public Employees Disclosure Act. It's meant to do two things, Mr. Speaker: to help restore confidence in the eyes of Nova Scotians in our system of government, while at the same time providing ministers of the Crown an ability to have a step-by-step process to follow should they find themselves in either a real or a perceived conflict of interest. Mr. Speaker, we realize that events that took place here in our province recently and even a few years ago left members of the House questioning what exact process was being followed within the Cabinet if members should find themselves in a conflict of interest. We had the Premier, the former Premier, who introduced legislation for the first time in Nova Scotia, which did create a code of conduct for Cabinet, and certainly that was an important piece of legislation here in this province. The problem was with that legislation is that it never really set out what process was to be followed if there actually was a conflict of interest. Now, Mr. Speaker, we all realize conflicts of interest are going to happen. Is there a reality in any organization you're in any government you're in? It's going to occur. But the problem was what happened, what were the steps to be taken? At one point, we thought maybe there was a policy that was adopted within government that said, here's what you do if you're in a conflict of interest. But our attempts to be able to even get a hold of that policy made it clear that we were left to conclude that no such policy existed. And now, that's not fair to ministers, and that's not fair to the public, that they not be aware of what the steps are to be taken. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill mirrors in many ways the legislation that exists in New Brunswick, where in New Brunswick they also brought in a code of conduct for their ministers, but within the legislation it sets out a step-by-step process of what a minister is to do should they find themselves in a conflict. For example, the legislation says that they must report it to the President of the Executive Council. At that point, the President of the Executive Council would name another minister responsible for that particular file. At the same time, a minister who may be in a conflict would not be permitted to be briefed or given updates on that particular file where they may be in conflict with. Mr. Speaker, the other major change in this legislation is that it now allows both elected members and the public to ask for an investigation by the Conflict of Interest Commissioner should they feel that a minister may have been in conflict. Previous to this, under the legislation the former Premier brought, it took a resolution of the House of Assembly to ask for an investigation or a request from Executive Council itself. Now, Mr. Speaker, while this sounds good in theory, under a majority government, the chances of a majority government allowing a resolution to go through the House asking for an investigation of one of their own cabinet ministers would have been a rare sight, to say the least, or to even expect that Executive Council itself would go ask the Conflict of Interest Commissioner to investigate one of their own members, I believe was an unfair process to start off with, and more than likely is not one that would have been effective. So, Mr. Speaker, again, this is legislation which is not meant in any way to attack any existing or previous members of the House. This is a means by which we as elected members can continue to work to restore confidence in Nova Scotians' eyes that when it comes to the workings of Cabinet, when it comes to the workings of government, and especially when it comes to the use of taxpayers' money, that they can have all confidence that the rules are being followed, and if a conflict should occur, that there is a clear process in place that they can follow as to what will happen. At the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, as I said, this is something that's going to protect the interests of Nova Scotians. It's going to protect the interests of existing cabinet ministers and protect the interests of ourselves as elected officials should we find ourselves in that situation. So I'm pleased to see that the government indicated in their throne speech a desire to bring this legislation forward. Today they are putting those words into action by calling this bill, and I look forward to it moving on to law amendments and speedy passage through this House this session. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to recognize the efforts of the Liberal caucus in bringing forward this legislation, not only before the last provincial election, but again in this session. I think anything we can do to enhance conflict of interest requirements with regard to ministerial code of conduct is important. I hope that this is the beginning of a debate that we should be continuing to have in this House, not only with regard to conflict of interest, but accountability and around democratization in our province. Whether we talk about the way our elections are operated, how they're financed, whether we're talking about enhancing a Freedom of Information Act that is in desperate need of improvements, Mr. Speaker, I would hope that as a House we can begin to recognize that these are measures that not only shouldn't be seen as punitive to those who want to enter politics, but should be seen as tenets of an important part of a democratic process in which citizens have an opportunity to have full knowledge of what is going on amongst their government and have an opportunity to ensure those who are making decisions are accountable for them. And we look forward to hearing law amendments from the citizens of Nova Scotia with regard to this.
The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the opportunity to say a few words on behalf of the Government Caucus. Clearly, as has been demonstrated since Progressive Conservative government took power in 1999, the issue of accountability and code of conduct of public servants has been a priority. And indeed, it was this government that introduced the first code of conduct for ministers. And be quite frank, Mr. Speaker, we are interested in looking at ways accountability and the public interest can be protected, not only among politicians, but among those who work for government. I mean, we all believe that all Nova Scotians have every right to have every confidence in their public service and in their government. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, the Government Caucus will be supporting this bill in second reading to move it on to the law amendments process.
If I recognize the Liberal Leader of the closed debate, the Honourable Liberal Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd certainly like to thank my colleague, the House Leader of the NDP, for his kind comments and for his support, and also the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia Municipal Relations. I wasn't sure if anyone from the government would address the bill at this stage, but I'm pleased to see that one of their more senior members has indicated the government's intent on seeing this legislation move forward. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I would happily move second reading of Bill number 30.
Question.
The motion is for second reading of Bill number 30. Would all those in favour please say aye? Contrary, nay. The motion is carried.
Bill number 30, an act to amend Chapter 4 of the Acts of 1991, the Members and Public Employees Disclosure Act.
Ordered that this bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to turn to public bill second reading.
Public bills for second reading.
Bill number 24, Agricultural and Marketing Act.
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the cooperation from members in the House. Mr. Speaker, this bill will enable policy development and regulation of Nova Scotia's wine, ciders, and fruit liqueurs industries. The industry supports our efforts to amend the present Agriculture and Marketing Act, and they have been consulted with. There are efforts underway between the federal government and the provinces to establish national wine standards, whereby Nova Scotia will benefit from having provincial legislation and provincial quality standards for wine. Our provincial industry has doubled in commercial grape production since 2000, and it is anticipated that there will be a doubling of farm and cottage wineries by the year 2015. The industry is expected to grow dramatically over the next decade, which requires regulation so that industry can make sound investment decisions based on firm and enforceable regulations. And I'm pleased to move second reading of this bill.
The honourable member for Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to speak on this, and I'll be brief. I have to say that I'm surprised, actually, that this industry has gotten to the stage that it has without regulation, so obviously I would think that considering the product that we're creating here, that it would be certainly in the best interests not only of the government and the citizens of the province, but certainly of the industry that regulation is in place, and the fact that the federal government is trying to move to national standards and draft regulation itself. I think Nova Scotia wouldn't have a very credible voice at the table unless it was in the process of trying to have regulation of its own industry. This has been a particularly successful industry in the province, Mr. Speaker, and I think it's one that policy and regulation that would enhance its development would be a very wise idea. And one of the most notable aspects of the development of particularly the wine industry, Mr. Speaker, is that over time this industry is to incorporate more and more Nova Scotia content or Nova Scotia grapes in its production. And this is one of those few incidents where actually the government was able to implement policy which actually was implementing buying local. And as much as we're told that you can't do that, this is one example where government was able to do that, and doesn't seem to have caused many ripples, and it has been a positive thing for the industry. Acreage in the province has grown dramatically over the past years, and this industry, as the minister indicated, is really expected to grow in the next decade or so. So I would say that for a number of positive reasons, and one in particular, considering the product that we're talking about, that to put quality assurance and regulation in place can only benefit the industry and the people of the province. So with that, we give our support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Kings West.
Just like to Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to rise on behalf of our caucus and certainly endorse this bill, and think that the time has come in Nova Scotia to set standards and establish regulation for an industry that is well established but has enormous potential. And I just look at the Annapolis Valley, where my riding is located, and see Grand Pré wineries, Gaspereau Winery, Saint Famille, and the growth of these over the past number of years. The number of new plantings in the valley certainly indicate that this is a vibrant industry, and having the basic product out of the valley and other parts of Nova Scotia move into our wineries. And I think it's another step in putting Nova Scotia on the map in this growing and important industry. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Agriculture. It'll be to close the debate. The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. To close debate, I just might say again, we really do appreciate the cooperation of members opposite regarding this piece of legislation, and I was a little remiss earlier in not mentioning the hard work of the former Minister of Agriculture, the honourable member for Argyle, because he put a lot of effort into this initiative, and I move second reading and really appreciate it. Thank you.
The motion is for second reading of Bill number 24. Will all those in favor please say aye? Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 24, an act to amend Chapter 6 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Agriculture and Marketing Act.
Ordered that this bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, private and local bills for second reading.
Private and local bills for second reading.
Bill number 28, New Miners Water Commission Act.
Bill number 28. The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is simply a housekeeping act. It was passed over 25 years ago. When it was first drafted, all the gender was with reference to males as opposed to males and females, so this makes that correction. And also the stipends are some 20 years out of date, and it makes them current. And with that, I move second reading of Bill number 28.
The motion is for second reading of Bill number 28. Would all those in favor please say aye? Aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 28, an act to amend Chapter 89 of the Acts of 1982, the New Miners Water Commission Act.
Ordered that this bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. Private and local bills. Sorry. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, would you please call Bill number 29?
Bill number 29. The Honourable Member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the member from Cape Breton Nova who introduced this bill, the Temple Sons of Israel Sydney Act, this is a piece of legislation that reorganizes the society upon which the Temple Society is based. Based on the fact, my understanding is that all the original members of the society have now passed away, and this will reorganize the organization, and I so move the legislation.
Question. It's called. The motion is for second reading of Bill number 29. Would all those in favor of the motion say aye? Aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 29, an act to amend Chapter 224 of the Acts of 1920, an act to incorporate the Temple Sons of Israel, Sydney.
Ordered this bill be referred to the Committee on Private and Local Bills. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, please call Bill number 34.
Bill number 34. The Honourable Member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know that this is a bill of interest to my colleague from Halifax Shabukto who introduced it, and also to at least one of the clerks of the House who is on the Board of Directors of the Maritime Conservatory of Music. And Mr. Speaker, this is a piece of legislation that again reorganizes and clarifies the society upon which the conservatory is based as a result of the fact that I believe there's a piece of legislation, but there's also an incorporation under the Societies Act, and this will allow for a much clearer understanding of how the society is organized, and I so move.
Motion is for second reading of Bill number 34. Would all those in favor please say aye? Aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 34, an act respecting the Maritime Conservatory of Music and the Maritime Conservatory of Performing Arts Society.
Order that this bill be referred to the Committee on Private and Local Bills. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Bill number 41.
Bill number 41. The Honourable Member for Kings West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This is the second occasion in which I've introduced this bill. The first draft was a little bit too broad in its legislation implications. So this one has been before the Union of Nova Scotia Municipalities, and it's very specific to the Kingston Food Bank, which, because of a little technicality, the Society built their new food bank on village land, and of course it's required by the Kings County Municipality that in fact they would tax any of the properties, and so the food bank came under taxation purposes. So this bill will provide the exemption for the Kingston Food Bank not to have to pay taxes to Kings County Municipality. Unless there's any other reason to have the bill further debated, I would move closure on Bill number 41 to go to close second reading, to go to second reading for Bill 41.
Motion is for the second reading of Bill number 41. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye? Contrary, nay. The motion is carried.
Bill number 41, an act to exempt the Kingston Food Bank from municipal taxation in the County of Kings.
Ordered that this bill be referred to the Committee on Private and Local Bills. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, that concludes the government's business for today. I move the House to be adjourned to sit again Monday beginning at 12 noon to 12 p.m. Monday evening, or 10 p.m. 10 p.m. After the daily routine, we'll move into the Committee of the Whole, House and Supply, followed by public bills for second reading, private members, public bills, and private local bills for second reading. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The House to now rise and meet at the hour of 12 noon on Monday. All those in favor, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried. We stand adjourned.